Let's move to this issue of the Prime Minister's travel over the Father's Day weekend. Some are saying it's a beat-up. Others are saying, no way, it's a Hawaii 2.0. Run us through what's come to light in the past 24 hours. Our colleague Kieran Gilbert had an interview with the Prime Minister. That's what you'd call in political staff terms a mopping up exercise. I'm interested in your assessment and I'll give you my view after that.
Well, I don't think it's a great look, only because at the moment people can't even go to the next suburb in New South Wales and Victoria to see their father. So if you're going to do this, I think you have to own it and put out the Instagram on the day of you in Sydney that day and just say, look, I've got an exemption, I'm doing it. And that's where he got in trouble with Hawaii as well, if you recall. If he'd said, I'm going to Hawaii, I know there's bushfires, but I promised my family this holiday, nowhere near the issue. So that's something I think the PM needs to reflect upon and iron out. Some of his staff, I know, in order to attend the parliamentary sitting, had to quarantine in Canberra for 2 weeks. I would have to quarantine if I wanted to cover the sitting weeks for 2 weeks. So there's no doubt there's a different rule. But you do sort of wonder why that's in place in terms of New South Wales, ACT and Victoria, because there's COVID in each jurisdiction. So it's kind of like, it's different to Queensland and WA and SA, etc., right? And how long are we going to go on like this? Well, let's hope when at 80% double vax, those three jurisdictions, at the very least, it's not like it currently is. It kind of points to how absurd it is when the Prime Minister has to quarantine to go between states of his country and he's in charge. So I guess I'm in two minds on it, Peter. But I would say the PM, above all else, just has to be upfront with these things when he does them. Otherwise, he runs the risk that people will perceive him as sneaky.
I think that's the issue. I mean, I want to see a country where the Prime Minister can freely travel, even in a pandemic, even in a crisis.
Yes.
And that's what we would expect from our leaders. But if he's going to go to Sydney, he goes to Sydney and he stays in Sydney. This idea that he had to come back for an NSC hookup, I can tell you, I know, there is plenty of capacity in the Sydney parliamentary offices to do NSC meetings in the most secure way, as secure as Canberra, so don't buy that. He obviously returned to Canberra. I think the issue for him was not where he travelled or when he travelled, it was why he travelled. The fact that he travelled to see his family, when in Victoria you can't go more than 5 clicks to see your family. You'd have to make an excuse to run into them in the park. If you could, you can't have them to your home. Everyone missed out on Father's Day. And so, you know, there's no crocodile tears for the Prime Minister, but it's the cover-up, I think, Andrew, that dogs the Prime Minister, the sense that he has poor judgment or a tin ear, not a lot of empathy on these issues. And again, if he'd gone up the weekend before, if he was to go up next weekend, but the fact it was Father's Day, when 15 million Australians are locked up and missing out, I think it speaks volumes.
Well, I wonder why he has to be back in Canberra. Now, some people are saying it's because the Women's Summit, they had that all set up there. Another reason, I guess, is he can't do without Phil Gaetjens, certain advisors that are based there, and his head of department, certain public servants. He feels he has to be physically with them. So, I mean, what's wrong with his family moving down and quarantining when there's homeschooling as well? There's all these different ways out of it than the path he took. But above all, he just has to be up front.
Yeah, and he should have just waited another week and get all of those other things out of the way. I think it's a terrible look and it'll be remembered in a way that, you know, these things cut through, as you know. They don't necessarily have the highest political order to them, but that's what people, you know, recognise at home, talk about it at home, and that sticks as a memory.